Hey everyone, in this video I'm going to show you how you can resist some of the tricks and techniques and things buyers like to try to say to get you to sell your item for much lower than what you should actually be selling it for compared to the established fair market value. Now there's two main reasons why sellers could be vulnerable to some of these things buyers like to try to say. Number one is decreased confidence in your negotiating skills. And that really stems off of, though, number two, which is not doing enough research in advance on your item so you know how it should be properly priced from the outset. So the way that we're going to prevent both of these problems from happening, decreased self-confidence, not having enough data, is by making sure that you go ahead of time before you have priced the item and do proper comps research. It's absolutely essential. I've talked about this in the last two videos, but I'm going to show you an example of it today, combined with some of the things that buyers sent me, some of the messages, and I'll tell you how I responded to them and how this ultimately worked its way out with a nice, profitable sale for this item right here, which is a Palladium Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles role-playing game book. It's actually dated from 1991, which it's not super old, but it also wasn't made yesterday. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle books and items from the 1990s are generally desirable items. There's a lot of people who grew up in that era who are trying to regain items that they had from their childhood that they either lost or got misplaced or got damaged or something like that. This book turns out to be a 12th printing. There were many printings of this one made. That's one thing that gives me a bit of a disadvantage with this item is that it's a later printing. So keep in mind that people are going to prefer to have a first printing because people love, collectors love to have that original item, the first time that it ever came out. They love to get that. Now, there's another segment of people who don't care so much about that and they just want the item to play with. And so for someone like myself who has a 12th printing book, that's the kind of buyer you're more gearing towards and looking out for. Keep in mind there is a price difference between that first printing book and the later printings, and in general the later printings are going to be worth less than the earlier printings, although that difference is going to diminish the farther you go out. So while there's a difference between a first and a second printing versus a 12th printing, there's not that big of a difference between a 12th printing, for example, and a 14th printing. So just a little side tip I like to throw in here and there for you. This book, if it looks familiar to you, it's one of the ones that I got out of the storage contents haul that I did. So if you haven't seen that video where I went and got all of that, all those storage unit contents and then did all the unboxing videos, go check that out. I have a playlist and this will pop up in one of those videos. But really the main thing that I want to show you about this item is I want to show you some things related to condition. And I'm showing you this because this is something that's going to come up a little bit later in terms of one of my interactions with the buyers. And so actually, we'll look at that. That's the back cover. But let me zoom into this for a moment here. And what I want you to see, this is actually a laminated cover. Not all these books are laminated, but this one is, again, the publisher is Palladium. They did laminate some of the books. But what you'll see here on the top right corner is there is a bunch of what look like creases, and they are creases, but it's also lamination that has been folded over, and that happens over time as the decades go by, as some of the lamination just starts to peel. Part of it depends on how it was stored, how it was used, that sort of thing will affect lamination peeling. You'll also see there's some of this on the side. I'm going to zoom into this a little bit more so you can see it better. But you see here, there's like a line here going down. That's lamination peeling right there. And that courses down through this side of the book. There is some of it on the bottom and there is some of it on the back. It's not as prominent on the back, but it is there. There's some mild spine wear here as well. Lamination peeling on the top. You can't see it that well here in this picture, but it is there. I had it, obviously in hand, and I could tell and I could describe it, in my listing. So you want to make sure you disclose these types of things. So it is there. Is it a lot of wear? I would not describe it as a lot of wear, but there is some wear to the item. You want to make sure you disclose it. So let me go back to the item and show you some other things about the book here. In this perspective on the side, you can see on that top corner, there's the lamination peeling, there's some creases, and also there's some bends to it as well. But you could see on a positive note, the spine is strong and intact. You could clearly read the title, which is good. There's no gouges, rips, anything like that. The cover is still nice and bright and glossy. For the most part, it displays fairly well. If you look on the inside, which is the part that people are going to actually use for the book, you're going to see here, well, right there to the left is where it says 12th printing, 1991. But you'll see in the pages that I show you here that they're really in pretty decent shape. I mean, the main thing here in terms of any kind of problem is that on the top corners, there's a little bit of discoloration there. It's nothing huge. There's no writing. There's no rips again. There's no highlighting. There's nothing like that, which is common to see in role-playing game books. People took lots of notes, scribbled in them. So you want to make sure if you get any of these books that you look through them for that type of stuff. You want to make sure you disclose it. As a little side tip here for you, you'll notice that I show pictures inside of these books. I strategically pick the pictures that I show because I'm looking to get an emotional response from the person who's looking back from a nostalgia perspective. I want them to look at and see a picture like this and remember back to it and say, oh, wow, I remember that guy. I remember those dogs. Remember when we used to play it and come across this page and the reaction we had. And that could be enough to make someone make an impulse purchase. Keep in mind also that there are a lot of your competitors that are just using a stock photo. Maybe they're taking a picture of the back cover, and more often than not, they're not taking pictures of the inside. And it doesn't take a lot. It doesn't take a lot extra time to go that extra mile, take a couple of these pictures inside and show it. I don't really want to show just 2 pages of text, like the page on the right. I don't want to show 2 pages like that. I want to show some images. Images really, really help with selling items. So, and again, if your competitors are not doing it, that could really help you stand out. But you see, the pages there are pretty decent. The most that we have in here really, again, is some discoloration on the top corners there. So now what we want to do is we want to figure out, and we want to do that data research I was telling you ahead of time, right? We want to make sure that when we list this item, we've got it priced fairly and properly from the outset. So what we've got to do, we got 2 main things we have to do. Let's start with the first. I've talked about this in my Craigslist video and my Facebook Marketplace video. So if you haven't seen those, check that out as well. So we'll go over these techniques there too. But what we want to do is we want to do some comps data research in which we're looking not only for the items that sold, but we're also looking at completed sales. That, by adding completed sales to just solds, that's going to tell us about the items that were listed but didn't actually sell once the time period ran out. So if it's sold, what it's going to show us here on desktop, it's going to show up in green for the price. If it didn't sell, it's going to show up in black. And take a look at what you are seeing here. You are seeing that these things sell, and they sell consistently. They sell between the $49.99 range and the $35 range. You are not seeing a single one of these being skipped over. There's not any that have been that were listed that didn't sell in that price range. So that is a very good sign, because that is showing you right there that you have a high demand item that sells well. And the fact that it's selling in this price range does tell you that it's in relatively low supply. How do you know that even more? Well, you could just go over and you could just look at what the price is. What's the lowest price for what someone is selling this item for right now? And let me just go back 1 page. And what you're going to see here, this is the lowest price. And this is what it was like when I list the item. These were the 2 lowest prices, a $38 plus a $5.25 shipping. So that's a $43.25 item. Okay, $43.25. So this isn't a $10 to $20 dollar book or less than $10 book, which would mean the market was saturated with this type of stuff. What this is telling you basically is for the lowest price to start off here, when these books are coming up, they generally are getting grabbed. Now, this one, we've got to figure out I have to figure out how I'm gonna price it, okay? Because I use what my competitors are priced at, and I try to beat people on price because I can source low. Remember, I told you I got this out of a storage unit contents haul, and I literally have a few cents into this book. So that really helps me in terms of being able to price it competitively and make a relatively quick sale on it. So here, this one here, let's go and take a look inside and see what we see. Well, we only have one photo. It's a stock photo. Not supposed to use these stock photos, but people do get away with using them sometimes. And if we go down, what we're going to see is that this is listed as in fair condition. Now, we do have to go down to the fine print to figure out what fair means for this particular seller. And when we read it, we're going to notice very quickly that this is in worse condition than my item. So if we read what it says it's very well used, but complete and usable, may have flaws such as tears, pen marks, or highlighting, large creases, stains, marks, a loose map, etc. I don't really have those things. I mean, even the creases I wouldn't say are large. I mean, I'd say moderate, but not large creases, and they're really restricted to that one corner. So this book, and you don't even know what it looks like because they're not even showing the actual book. So, a lot of people are going to shy away from something like this. So I don't want to put my price lower than this. I want to price my item properly. So I'm going to price it above the $43.25. Now, I've got to take a look at the next level up, see where that item is priced, and also see what their reputation is. This person here had 99.9% feedback. So let's go over to this one here. This is the next one up. We've got a $49.99 price range with price with free shipping. This person has 100% positive feedback, almost 1,000 feedbacks. And if we look at the item, really the main problem that you're going to see with it is that there's a crease on the corner. That's really it. There very, very, very minimal lamination peeling on the top. So this is in better, and some on the side, but overall, this is in better condition than my book is, and this is priced at $49.99. Now, what do we know based on a lot of comps research here is that really the upper end for this is right around that $49.99 range. So if you remember when we scrolled up here, this is where we really have that starting point. So my decision here was to price this between there. So between the $49.99 and the $43.25. So that put me smack dab at $44.99. And while I had it up for $44.99, I get this message right over here from a buyer. I just crack up every time I read this. It says, this book sold for $20 when I bought it new. And this is the most important part here. I can't see paperbacks gaining value. Well, that makes absolutely no sense. Couple things. Number one, the book technically sold for $11.95, so $12 when it first came out. But now who knows? Maybe this person's just misremembering, or maybe they bought it for $20 off someone else at a later point. I don't know. But that's really not the main point. The main point is this part. I can't see the paperbacks gaining value. That is totally not true. Okay? Paperbacks will gain value just like any item will gain value if you have two key elements. That's why it's so important to understand supply and demand. If you have high demand and a low supply or a relatively low supply, it's going to drive up price compared to what the original price was. I don't care what it is. If it's a book, if it's a record, if it's a statue, it doesn't matter what it is. It could be a DVD. I don't care. The price is going to go up when you have those two things combined. And so, if you don't believe that, I mean, you could just go over here, for example, just take a look at this book, The Secret, okay? I've talked about this in my Facebook group, the Facebook Reselling Resource Center. This book, this treasure hunt, is a great book. There's not a lot of them made. It has a really cool topic area. Basically, the guy who wrote the book, I won't make this a long story, but he basically hid 12 ceramic keys throughout the country. And to this date, this was made in the 1980s. To this date, only 2 of the keys have been found. And if you find the keys, the clues of which are given in the book based on how you find the clues based on some pictures of paintings that are in there and some poems. And if you find the ceramic key and turn it into the publisher, at least this is what it was supposed to be before the publisher went bankrupt, you could exchange it for a gem worth $1,000. And to this day, there are still people that hunt for these keys. And you could go and research it online. You'll see there's tons of stories about it. It's a very interesting thing. But a lot of people want to get their hands on this book. Now, if you found the keys, I don't even know if you could get the gems anymore, because supposedly the gems were lost and the author died in a car accident. His widow supposedly found the gems, so I don't know. But it's an interesting story, and it's something that has helped to really drive the price up for this book, even though, now this is a completed sale price here, $350. When this book came out, this is probably a $10, $20 book at the most, but now routinely sell for hundreds when you could find it. Or take a look here. This is the novelization of the Halloween movie by Curtis Richards in 1979. It's a first edition paperback. This book just sold for $250. And look at this. We got wear all over the book. But, wear becomes more acceptable to collectors when there's not a lot of supply around. So they take what they can get, even if it has wear on it, just to say that they still at least have it. This is why coverless comic books, for example, can still sell, because if there's relatively few around that even have a cover on them, then people will buy the ones that are coverless. So that's just something to keep in mind with that. So I basically just declined this person's offer, and if you're curious why I do that, I'll explain a little bit about that here, but I have a whole video on that, on declining offers from buyers. I do not automatically counter offer. I have explained this before. Go to my playlist section. If you're new to my channel, I have a whole section dedicated to negotiation techniques and strategies, especially ones focused on dealing with lowballers. I think a lot of you will find those interesting, but we're too far off here, so I just declined. And I did put a message into decline explaining politely that, of course, items could go up in value when you have the situation I just described with high demand and low supply. Now, sometimes the person will write back and send another offer. Sometimes they might respond. Sometimes they just walk away. This person walked away, didn't respond, might not have believed of what I was saying. And you really, technically, I don't know what was in this person's head. I mean, did this person really believe what they were saying? Were they really just misinformed? That's entirely possible. At the same time, they could very well know what the actual value is, and it's not too hard to find out. As I just showed you, all you have to do is just do a basic search on eBay, and you could tell that this book is worth well over $20. So sometimes people will use a message like this to, basically as a negotiation tactic, as a trick to try to get you to lower the price and see if you'll fall for it. So see here, this was on December 14th. Now, you have to be willing sometimes to be patient and to wait a little bit in terms of the right person to come along who may want the item. And that actually wound up being this person over here. But, not really certain of that right at the outset, because the initial message that I got with a offer of $25, after I then lowered the price down to $39.99, is there was a lot of wear on it. Now, let me just stop for a second. I've talked about this in some other videos. What I will do is, after a week goes by, if the item did not sell, then I will lower the price somewhat. I might lower it only $1. I might lower it $2.50. I might lower it $5. It just depends. I didn't have any watchers on the item, or I might have had one, and I decided just to lower it to $39.99. Now at this point, just to tell you, I do not really care at this point that the item is technically now at a lower price compared to this one over here. And here's my logic on this. Number one, I sourced it for very low, so I don't have much into it. But number two, if the difference was so obvious to buyers out there that my price was better and the way I had this all presented and situated was better compared to this one, then my item would have sold within that first week. It didn't. If it's a hot enough item, if it's priced exactly properly where it should be, that item is going to sell. But remember, I have two things going against me with my item. I do have some wear to it, and I do have that it's a 12th it's a 12th printing. So this person then comes at me with a $25 offer, tells me there's lots of wear as a way to try to get the price down to $25. But we know right from doing our comps research that $25 is too low. I'm comfortable at the $39.99 range, still negotiating this down to $35, but not lower than that. Why $35? Again, that gets back to the comps research here that clearly established that the market value, fair market value for this is between $35 and $50. Now, someone might respond and say, well, why don't you just leave it at list it for $35 and keep it there? Well, the reason for that is because this has shown that it has sold for higher than that. And sometimes, in fact, a lot of times when I have the price at like something like $39.99, someone will just come across and they'll come along and they'll buy it. They'll buy it for the $40, even though I have best offer enabled, and they'll just grab it because they don't want someone else to get it. They don't want to wait. Maybe there's some kind of urgency where they really want the book or something like that. They don't want to risk losing it to somebody else. There's all sorts of things that could play out. So sometimes that can happen. But it also still gives me room to negotiate. Some people like to feel like they get a deal. They like to make offers. So there's some people who want to feel like they got a couple bucks off, and I don't mind doing that for people as long as things are fair. It's fine to negotiate. It's fine to take some off. But you got to make sure you're not getting completely taken advantage of. And if you go, here and you look, like, let's take a look at one of these items that's sold. If we want to, like, this person is talking about wear and condition. Let's just click this item right here, okay? We'll just take one and look at it. Of course, you could search and look at other ones, but just look at this one here. Now, this one sold for $35, right? And look at this. This has plenty of wear. In fact, this has a worse situation than my book in that it has part of the cover actually, like some of the cardboard layer is peeled so it's white. You also have lamination peeling on the top with some bends and some creases, and you also have some there. You have some indentations in the book as well. So there's technically, according to this person, lots of wear here, but this book sold for $35. So that was essentially my response to this buyer, was just letting them know while I declined the offer. Okay, I declined it. I did not counter. I declined it. And this person then wound up offering me $30 for the item. And then I wound up counter offering them at $35 because I like to be at that midway point. And remember, the midway point for me where I'd be comfortable is $35. So that means that person has to make me an offer that would be at $30 for me to counter and get to the midway point at $35. So $25 isn't going to do it. So now some people might say, well, why don't you just counter 35 from the 25? My experience with that is that while that can work sometimes, more often than not, it doesn't. And a lot of times the person will just walk away. So in this situation, if they come back a second time, that gives me additional confidence that that person really wants the item because they're coming back again, even after I did a decline. They really do want the item. That gives me even more confidence that when I counter, that then in that situation they're going to accept it. It also does make it appear more fair if I'm countering at a midway point as opposed to countering at $10 up from where they were and only $5 lower from where I was. So I like to make it that fair midway point. I've talked about that in other videos as well. And then once I did that, this person went and made the purchase. So this is actually a completed sale right here. In fact, if you go and we go back to these completed sale items right here, you will see that one of these here is mine. So the price, I did sell it for $34.99. This one, which one is it here? It's this one. Where is it? $39.99. It's going to be a $39.99 crosser. Yeah, here it is. So it should say, nope. Was it the buyer ID? Yeah, here it is right here. Yep. So this is the completed sale right there. So there you go. So that's just basically how it wound up working out in the end. And those are the kind of techniques and things you've got to use in terms of research to have that on your side to make sure that you're able to do proper negotiations and not just give things away. Don't sell the item for $20. Don't sell it for $25. Don't sell it for $30. Sell it for consistent with where the fair market value is. And if people are trying to convince you of otherwise, you could try to educate them, give them a little bit of information. And sometimes they'll hear that, by the way. It's not a total waste of time. Sometimes they'll hear that. They'll say, you know what, that's right. And then they'll make the deal with you. So that's pretty much it. If you enjoyed the video, make sure that you hit the like button. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure that you come to the Facebook group, the Facebook Reselling Resource Center. The link to that is down below in the description section, as well as to my Instagram account. That's @prime_time_treasure. I'll see you back at the next video, everyone. Take care.